Aloha and welcome to the Houses segment of Live at the Legislature, where every week we sit down and talk to a bunch of articulate and talented members of the House of Representatives. This morning we have with us Representative Troy Hashimoto. He represents the Wailuku area on the island of Maui. And also joining us is Representative Amy Peruso. She represents the Waihewa Whitmore Village area on the island of Oahu. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you,
Thank
Carolyn.
you for having us.
So let's start with you, Representative Peruso. In putting your package of bills together for this session, what is it that you focused on?
I was really trying to be responsive to the concerns that I heard as I was canvassing. So I knocked on tens of thousands of doors, at least 10,000 doors, and I really heard concerns about an existential crisis facing us around climate change, growing social inequality, and crumbling infrastructure. So I tried to organize my legislative proposals in a way that addressed those concerns.
And what were some of those particular issues that...
I think that my focus was really on education, because that's my background, aloha aina, economic justice, and human rights.
And you, Representative Hashimoto, you were formerly the Chief of Staff to the Maui Council Chair Mike White.
That's right.
So you bring to the legislature this perspective of the day-to-day county issues. Is any of that reflected in some of the legislation that you introduced?
Absolutely. I think it's very important to realize the importance of home rule and especially the neighbor islands being able to take care of the top priorities that may be very different than what is happening here on Oahu. So I think, one of the biggest things that we're going to be dealing with is short-term rentals, and I think some of the legislation that I introduced will give the counties more power to deal with that on a local basis. Whether it's outright regulating short-term rentals from a county perspective, or giving them the tools to simply enforce. So I think those are very important priorities to help us with a broader goal of making sure that we have affordable housing available to many of our residents. I think that's the number one issue that I'm hearing as throughout the state, that's very important. So we need to approach it on various fronts, and I think short-term rentals is one of them. I think it's also giving resources and pushing it down to the county level to allow them to also work and help with the issue is also very important.
Well, there's been some tension sometimes between the counties and the state. Your presence here in the legislature, do you think you can be like the middleman, the guy who can make everybody be friends?
Well, I think it's always helpful to have someone with that perspective, and I think there are many others who also have that perspective. But you're right; it's really about finding that common ground, and I think we're still facing that right now in terms of how we're going to allocate the transient accommodations tax, and so that's going to be a very big issue that the counties continue to grapple over, especially with the neighbor islands having Kauai and the Big Island are having issues balancing their budget. So they're looking at revenue sources. And I think we have to be mindful of those needs and be sure that we give them the appropriate resources that are needed to operate the counties, because they do play an important role. They're complementary to the state. And I think when people look at government, they don't look at county or state, they look at one government. So I think government overall running well is to all of our benefit.
Representative Peruso, you are a former social studies teacher.
I am.
And your focus obviously has been on educational opportunity. Can you talk a little bit about one or two of the bills in that area that you are pushing for?
Sure. So I think in response to the teacher shortage crisis and the conversation we've been having for a few years actually around funding in public education and the failure of the constitutional amendment last year. I think it's really incumbent upon the legislature to kind of recognize our responsibility in that area and to address the crisis. So I do have one bill, House Bill 1285, that seeks to provide additional funding for public education through a small increase in the GET and then higher income taxes for the highest income earners. And then the other area that I'm really focused on is testing, so the over-testing that's still happening in our schools.
Well, in the funding for education, obviously the failure of the Con Am brings up the question of how to best fund education in this state. And there have been people who have been saying, we need to hold the DOE accountable. We need to know that if we raise taxes or we give them more money, that none of it's going into a dark hole.
Right. And I think that the new approach to the budget adds an interesting dimension to that discussion this year. I do think, having worked within the system for a long time, that it's hard to imagine any hidden pots of money. And I think there are some discussions to be had around allocation of personnel and getting more teachers back into the classroom. But I think that our system is seriously underfunded overall, and I don't think that we're going to be able to fund the system adequately by finding waste. So.
You are the vice chair.
Correct.
For higher education.
Correct.
But this brings my question to you. One of the bills that you've introduced, well, first of all, Maui has a great, it's not a community college anymore. They changed it to, it's a University of Hawaii at Manoa.
It's slowly transitioning four-year institution.
To a four-year institution.
Right, yeah.
Let's talk, and it is a great school. So tell me a little bit, you have introduced a bill to help.
Well, yeah, I think, for the neighbor islands especially, there's not many options. And so I think we have to look at the university system as the way to help educate, and allow people to pursue opportunities. One of them does include education. Right now, you can't get an education degree and become a teacher on the neighbor islands very easily. And so I think one aspect of the teacher shortage is we just need to educate more teachers and get them certified. And there's no easy way to do that currently. So one of my bills that passed out of the Lower and Higher Education Committee on the House side pushes for distance learning to have a complete educational program online. Because if you're on Maui or Kauai, you can't really become a teacher easily. And so we need to change that, and as we get more volume, I think that's going to help our teacher shortage issue. We also have many different programs at Maui College that are kind of budding up, and they're being truly innovative in what they're trying to implement. And one of them is the Food Innovation Center. And so we're really fighting this year to get positions for the newly renovated Food Innovation Center that's coming up at Maui College. Last year we spent $7 million to renovate a building on the Maui College campus, and we're looking forward to make sure that we can get the people to run that facility.
Well, I hope that the folks on Maui are listening to you, because this guy is working really hard to get Maui College their money. I also wanted to say that you are brand new reps, and you've got a lot of work ahead of you. So thank you for being with us this morning. I appreciate that, and thank you all of you for joining us. We'll see you next week.